and Auld.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so delighted that this week we're going to be joined by Joan McAlpine. Joan McAlpine is taking forward a wonderful new initiative, which, as we begin Burns season, is absolutely who we need to be talking to. This is about Robert Burns's farm. It's the Ellisland project. And so Joanne is project director of the Robert Burns Ellisland Trust. So, Joanne, without more ado, please tell us what this wonderful new project is all about, how it began, and what's got you to this point, because it's not like it just started last week. You've been working at this for quite a few years.
Yes, good morning, Camilla. And can I first of all say I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you very much for all the support that you have given Ellisland and our project. Saving the Home of Auld Lang Syne is the name of our project. And that's because Ellisland is the farm where Burns wrote Auld Lang Syne, possibly the most famous of all his songs, the worldwide anthem to friendship, and a very, very loved song throughout the world. In fact, I believe it's the most sung song in the world collectively after Happy Birthday. So Ellisland is the place which gave birth to Auld Lang Syne, and it's very, very special.
So the project began in 2020.
That's correct.
And you have been moving it along to the point now where you've announced it. And the vision is for this to be a cultural centre with accommodation too. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yes, I certainly can, Camilla. Can I tell you a little bit about Ellisland in the background, first of all?
Yes, please.
So obviously Robert Burns, our national poet, was born in Ayrshire, and we have a wonderful birthplace museum to him in his father's house in Ayrshire, which a few years ago the Scottish Government and others invested to make it worthy of the National Bard's birthplace. So Burns was born in that house. He worked on a number of farms in Ayrshire before he had his incredible success with poems chiefly in the Scots dialect, so that's known as the Kilmarnock edition. And after that, he went to Edinburgh, and he was a bit of a rock star of his day. He was just perhaps the first Scottish celebrity. So he was very, very famous in Edinburgh. Everybody wanted to meet him, especially the ladies. And after some time in Edinburgh, he decided he wanted to get back to his roots of farming. That was so close to his identity. He wrote about nature, he wrote about the land, he wrote about the people of Scotland, the simple people who farmed the land, and he wanted to get back to that. And he had an opportunity to take out a tenancy in a farm near Dumfries, which is further south of Scotland. And his new landlord said he would give him money to build a farmhouse and to lay out the field, just basically to create his own farm from scratch. And so that's why he came to Ellisland and he built the farmhouse. So it's the only farmhouse, it's the only home he actually built. He chose the setting. He called the setting Sweet Poetic Ground because it overlooks the beautiful River Nith. And everything there, the buildings, the field structure, the woodlands, was created for his tenancy in 1788. And as if he wasn't busy enough building his farm, he managed to get married to his sweetheart, Jean Armour. So it was their first marital home together. So it's very romantic. And he was incredibly creative and productive while he was there in an artistic sense. So as well as Auld Lang Syne, he wrote his great masterpiece, Tam O'Shanter. And it's believed that that was perhaps spurred by his pony journeys to and from the centre of Dumfries. But he wrote many other songs, Sweet Afton, many Jacobite songs, Killiecrankie, Johnny Cope. He wrote a lot about nature, the banks of Doon, for example, and My Heart's in the Highlands he wrote there. So A lot of his energy at Ellisland, as well as farming, went into writing songs and collecting songs, and saving the musical heritage of Scotland was a big part of his project there. So the book that he contributed to while he was at Ellisland was a book called The Scots Musical Museum, and it was a book gathering the ordinary songs and tunes of Scotland and putting sometimes Burns's own lyrics to them, sometimes adaptations of older lyrics, to save the culture of the country, the musical culture of the country. So he was a very busy man when he was at Ellisland.
So I have two questions for you.
Yes.
I know a lot of the manuscripts, the music manuscripts, are at the National Library of Scotland. Is this book you speak about, of the Scots music book, at the National Library too?
Well, the Scots Musical Museum, there will be first editions of it probably in the National Library, although recently I was speaking to Professor Murray Pittock, who you may have come across. He's the Vice Principal of Glasgow University, and he edited a recent edition, a notated edition of the Scots Musical Museum. And he told me that many of the original first editions, because the music, it's actually scored music, so people would have bought it in order to play the music.
Yeah.
And so what they would have done is, like, they would have ripped out the pages of the sheet music according to what they wanted to play. So there aren't that many intact versions of it anymore, Professor Pittock says. But there will be some, but of course there'll be many obviously repeat editions of it as well. Incidentally, when he was collecting these songs at Ellisland, he said he wasn't a great singer, but he had a really good head for a tune. He could keep a tune in his head. So what he would do is he would take the tune and his lyric to a group of young girls called the McMurdo sisters in a neighbouring estate. They were the daughters of the factor. And they had a harpsichord, which is a primitive piano. Yeah. And he would hum out the tune and they would play out the tune on the harpsichord. And we have the harpsichord, pieces of the harpsichord at Ellisland. And apparently harpsichords, they don't have a long life, they fall apart. And so this harpsichord went the way of all harpsichords, it fell apart. But because it was the harpsichord that Burns's tunes were first played on, it was kept, and it was made into a little whatnot, which is in the corner. It's a little table, corner table. But that's part of our wonderful collection at Ellisland, because I didn't get the chance to say that, as well as the buildings that he created, which are very special, and the nature, we do have, since the 1930s, the previous trust who safeguarded the site began collecting Burns memorabilia. So the harpsichord's part of it, but we also have a flute that belonged to Burns's son, which I can tell you about separately. That's part of our collection too. A number of personal possessions and a number of manuscripts as well.
Well, before we do that, let's hear some music, and return in a moment. Thank you.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and auld lang syne? For auld lang syne, my Jo, for auld lang syne, we'll tak a cup o' kindness yet for auld lang syne, and surely you'll buy your pints too.
I know from first-hand experience how transformational it can be to connect with your own cultural heritage, to feel a sense of pride in that and to have the opportunity to express yourself through that. Being here at Ellisland is very, very powerful in that sense. I can't think of a better way to invest in our cultural heritage. Within this place is so much incredible history and so much potential to inspire the next generations. If we value that, then we must save Ellisland. We must look after it for the future.
And so I'm really fascinated to hear about the flute and about his son, and also your plans around the flute, because I'm going to jump forward a little bit. What are you looking to do in 2026 and beyond? Because we're now talking because you've announced this wonderful capital project, and there are plans afoot for all sorts of things to be happening, and the flute and music are central to that.
Yes, absolutely. As I said, that music was very important to Burns's time at Ellisland. We took over Ellisland at a time it was in crisis. It had been looked after from 1928 onwards by a very small local charity. Eventually, time took its toll, and they ran out of funds. And so the place is under threat. Our manuscripts, the items in our collection that belong to Burns are under threat because the buildings are decaying and damp, and they don't really have the facilities to welcome people. So our project, which I've been working on since 2020, building up the case, commissioning specialist reports. We've currently got an architecture and design team working on it, is to restore the farm, first of all, to save it, to create a proper museum space for our valuable collection, to create a place where people can come and perform, undertake education, where they can see the farm as it was in Burns's day, because we're restoring the cottage to exactly as it was in Burns's time, using some recent discoveries that give us more information about the house in his time, and also to allow people to come and stay on the farm. So when Burns lived at Ellisland, he was given the keys to a little summer house in the neighbouring estate called the Hermitage, which is like a tiny, tiny bothy. And so we're going to recreate small homes, very sensitively placed in the woodlands and overlooking the river, where people can come and stay on Burns's farm. And sometimes that will be for artistic residency, so that singers and artists and songwriters and poets can come and collaborate and work together, inspired by Burns's farm. But it can also just be people who wish to come and immerse themselves in the place that Burns found so beautiful. And that will create a sustainable income that will allow us to look after the site properly and look after the collection properly in decades and, I hope, centuries to come.
Well, we're so lucky to have a stay as part of our Burns auction that we're doing, and I have to give this a plug now, two return tickets with JetBlue to Edinburgh, and then a stay with you for 5 nights on the farm in this really beautifully restored cottage. And so that will also be available for other people to let, will it, this summer?
Yes, well, we already the cottages I was telling you about as part of our future project, they have not been built yet. They're being designed by our architects at the moment. But we do have a cottage that I sort of supervise the restoration of it. It's called Old Acquaintance Cottage. It's right next to the farm, and it overlooks the River Nith. It's got 2 bedrooms, and I think the design inside was what you call modern rustic. So it's it's a country style, but very, very comfortable. And of course, full of Burnsiana as well, and very cozy.
We're very excited by that, because also you are right next, you're close to Dumfries. And therefore, when somebody is visiting, they can experience the taverns and different places that were part of his life at Ellisland.
Yes, when Burns was in Dumfries, he was very sociable. He later moved into the town, but there's a his favourite tavern was the Globe Inn, a very old tavern, and it has been restored by two entrepreneurs who also own the Annandale Distillery, and that it has been beautifully restored as a fine dining restaurant. It's a very, very special place, and Burns is front and foremost. And then you can see the house where Burns died, and you can visit his mausoleum in St Michael's Kirkyard, which is very special also. So there's lots to see in Dumfries. It's all within walking distance, and we're all collaborating very closely to increase the Burns offer in Dumfries, and to tell people about it, because Burns is associated with Ayrshire, but actually as an adult, as a married man, as a father, it was Dumfries where he spent his time, and so much of his wonderful work was
You're going
created
to
there.
make such a great experience for people now, because they really can see his complete life by visiting the various places, and the
Yes.
fact that they can stay on the farm is going to be a wonderful addition. And I'm also looking forward to seeing the events that you hold, because I do hear that with the people who have heard the flute and the music you put around it, there's apparently a wonderful singer who also involved, has been really wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about that, because that is what we're going to hear, I know, in the States later this year.
That's right. We're very, very excited about that. Well, as I said earlier, Burns at Ellisland was very focused on music. And in our collection, we have a flute, which belonged to his son, James Glencairn Burns, who was an accomplished flautist. We know from Burns's letters that he himself had been learning to play the flute later in life. So perhaps he passed that, love of the instrument on to his son, James Glencairn Burns. So this flute sat in our collection for decades. It was made in the early 19th century. It was not playable. It had been damaged. And so we got a grant from the Pilgrim Trust, and we sent it to specialist conservators, and it was fully restored with the original keys and springs replaced, and or restored rather. And now it's being played as part of a trio. The flautist is a local flautist, traditional flautist called Claire Mann. They're working with a harpist, beautiful harpist who's actually from the Highlands, called Rebecca Hill. But the leader of the trio is a former Young Traditional Singer of the Year from Dumfries and Galloway called Robin Stapleton, who is a foremost interpreter of Burns songs. And she's worked closely with experts on the Ellisland songbook. So that's the songs that he wrote while he was here, to put together a very, very special performance involving this flute. So the flute has been played in public twice since we've had it restored. Once at a private event during the Edinburgh Festival, and 2 weeks ago it was played just ahead of St Andrew's Night for the launch of our campaign, Saving the Home of Auld Lang Syne. So we plan to take the trio, including the flute, to the United States next year. And we're coming over for Tartan Week, and we're really looking forward to working with you and the American Scottish Foundation, Camilla, and to let as many people as possible hear the music. That's the living culture of Ellisland, so that we can then save Ellisland and let more people know about it. We've got a lot of money to raise, but we want people to know about it, and we want people to support us. And when we have restored the site, we want people to come and visit us.
So, but it will be open in this coming year for people to take walks across the farm. Is that correct?
Yes, but we have woodland walks. So the woodland walks they were laid out, we believe, for Burns's tenancy. So Burns he was an improving farmer, an Enlightenment farmer. And during the Enlightenment, people were beginning to understand about how you got the most out of soil. So there was actually quite a lot of tree planting during that time. So the woodlands were planted for his time. Some of the trees may have been planted by Burns himself. And so you can enjoy the walks along the Nith that he took. And there is a path along the Nith which is known as the Tam O'Shanter Path. We know that Burns wrote his famous poem Tam O'Shanter while he was out walking beside the Nith. And we know that because his wife, Jean Armour, later spoke about it when she was interviewed. She talked about taking the children out to see him. She talked about taking his lunch out to him and how he would recite the jokes in the poem and laugh at his own jokes as he was writing it. So you can literally walk in the footsteps of Burns when you visit us. You can walk up to the little hermitage, the little summer house that he wrote in. And you can obviously, during the summer season, visit our museum. You can see the room that he designed himself, where he wrote so many of his poems. You can see a little lending library that he had created for local workers because he wanted to pass on his knowledge to others. And you can see personal items such as his fishing rod. He used to catch trout in the river. He was a keen fisherman. And things belonging to his wife, like her hat and things that she made, like her pillowcase. So there's lots to see. I think what's most special is the presence, the sense of his presence in the place.
Well, we are very excited to be working with you, to be a part of this journey. Congratulations for bringing it to this point that now all of us can learn more about it. And we're going to close by hearing another piece of music from Ellisland, and look forward to seeing you very soon, either here or on another episode of The Scots in Us. Thank you so much for joining us today and telling us all about this. And we're going to put up some links so people know how to learn more about everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, Camilla, and we're very much looking forward to seeing everyone in April.
For all